I never thought the day would come when my own son would scream at me, spit venom in my face, and order me out of the very house I built with his father. But there I was, standing in the living room, clutching the photo frame of my late husband, while my son, the boy I had carried for 9 long months, pointed at the door like I was some unwanted stranger. "Get out," he yelled. "You're useless now. This house is mine. Go die somewhere else." Those words, they cut deeper than any knife ever could. I had sacrificed everything for him, my dreams, my youth, even my health. And yet, in the blink of an eye, I was disposable. Just another obstacle standing in the way of his newfound wealth. But here's the thing: karma has a strange way of turning the tables. Because just 5 days later, yes, only 5 days, the same son who threw me out with nothing was on his knees, begging for my help. And the look on his face when the lawyer read the will, I will never forget it. So, what would you have done if you were in my place? Would you forgive, or would you let him taste the poison he served you? Before I dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next twist. For most of my life, I believed I had the kind of family other women envied. A hardworking, successful husband, a son who grew up with every opportunity at his fingertips, and a home that felt safe, warm, and full of promise. My husband was a self-made man, a businessman who had clawed his way up from nothing. He loved us, but if I'm being honest, he adored our son in a way that was almost blinding. To him, the boy could do no wrong. If our son forgot his homework, it was the teacher's fault. If he broke something expensive around the house, it was just a phase. And if I ever tried to discipline him, I was told, "Don't be so hard on him. He's destined for greatness." I didn't complain. That was the role I had chosen for myself. His mother, his quiet supporter, the one who smoothed the edges and sacrificed my own needs so he could shine. I gave up career opportunities, sold family heirlooms to pay for his tuition when business was tight, and spent countless nights awake, worrying about his future. I thought love meant giving without keeping score, and for a long time it seemed worth it. He was charming, clever, and carried himself with the confidence his father had nurtured in him since childhood. Friends would remark how lucky I was. "Your son will take care of you one day." I believed them. I told myself the sacrifices I made would come back to me in the form of respect, gratitude, and love. But looking back now, I see the cracks that were always there. Small things that should have warned me. The way he demanded rather than asked. The way he dismissed waiters and staff, speaking to them as though they were beneath him. The way he bragged about money that wasn't even his yet, boasting to friends about my house, my car, my inheritance. I brushed it off as youthful arrogance. Didn't all teenagers go through phases of selfishness? Didn't all young men take their parents for granted before maturity settled in? Yet sometimes, late at night, when I was alone in the kitchen cleaning up after one of his messes, I would pause and wonder, what if I'm raising someone who doesn't know how to love me back? What if I'm just raising a king who will one day throw his crown at me and call me a servant? I never said those thoughts out loud. I buried them. I told myself my husband was right. Our son was destined for greatness. And greatness, surely, would have room for his mother at the table. But here's the truth I wish I had understood then: entitlement doesn't shrink with wealth. It grows. And a boy who is handed everything without learning humility eventually believes the hands that fed him are worthless once he no longer needs them. And me, I was too blinded by love to see that the son I adored was slowly learning to adore only himself. The day my husband died felt like someone had ripped the floor out from beneath me. One moment, he was there, still strong, still carrying himself like the man who had built an empire out of nothing. The next, he was gone. A sudden heart attack. No warnings. No gentle goodbyes. Just silence where his voice used to be. The house that night was suffocating. People filled the rooms. Neighbors, relatives, business associates, offering condolences, hugging me, whispering how, at least I had my son. Everyone said it like he would be my anchor now, my reason to stand tall. I wanted to believe them. But when I caught glimpses of my son's face as he mingled with the crowd, there was something in his eyes that unsettled me. Not just grief. Something sharper. Anticipation. A week later, we gathered in the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. I sat rigid in my chair, clutching tissues in trembling hands. My son sat beside me, dressed in his best suit, jaw tight, eyes focused on the manila folder on the desk. It should have been a moment of unity. A mother and son clinging to each other in loss. But I felt the space between us growing colder. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began. He spoke of debts cleared, donations promised, small gifts to distant relatives. I barely heard any of it, still half lost in grief. But then came the line that cracked my world apart. And to my beloved son, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the family home and assets, valued at $44 million. My breath caught. The room blurred. I felt my heart hammering as though it might tear through my chest. $44 million, the mansion, all of it to him. And to my wife, the lawyer continued, his voice like a knife. A monthly maintenance stipend of $3,000 for her needs. That was it. A stipend. Enough to survive, maybe, but nothing compared to what my husband had poured into our son's hands. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. Everyone's eyes turned toward me, waiting for some reaction. My son squeezed my hand, leaning in close. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. Outwardly, it looked like comfort, but his lips curled ever so slightly, a smirk only I could see. That smirk told me everything. This wasn't grief. This was triumph. He had been waiting for this moment. Waiting for the day he would be crowned king of the empire his father built. And in that instant, I understood. The son I had raised to believe he was destined for greatness now saw me as nothing but a leftover detail in his story. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to ask my husband, why would you leave me with scraps while giving our son everything? Didn't my years of sacrifice mean anything? Didn't you see how blind devotion would spoil him? But I stayed silent, numb, my hands folded in my lap, knuckles white. My son walked out of that office taller, prouder, almost glowing. He shook hands with the lawyer. thanked the relatives, and strutted like a man who had just won a prize. And me, I shuffled behind him, the widow who had apparently been written out of her own life. That night, as I lay awake in the same bed I had once shared with my husband, I replayed the lawyer's words. Maintenance stipend. Like I was some dependent, some afterthought. And the worst part, I saw the way my son looked at me when we returned home. No longer as a son looks at his mother, but as an owner looks at someone who lives on his property. And that was only the beginning. Grief should have brought us closer. That's what everyone told me after the funeral. Lean on your son, he's all you have now. But within days of the will reading, I began to see the cracks. Small things at first. He stopped eating dinners with me at the table, preferring to sit alone in my husband's study. His study now. He stopped asking how I was, stopped checking if I'd eaten, if I'd slept. It was as if the funeral had buried my place in his life along with his father. By the fourth day, his tone shifted completely. He came down the stairs one morning, dressed in one of his father's tailored suits, a glass of whiskey in hand, though the sun had barely risen. His voice was sharp, cold. From now on, he said, this house runs my way. I blinked at him, stunned. Your way. He smirked. Don't play dumb, Mother. The will was clear. This house, the business, the estate. It's all mine now. You're just a guest here. The words sliced through me. Just a guest. I had built this home brick by brick beside my husband. I had carried that boy inside me, given up my own dreams to raise him, stayed up through fevers, exams, heartbreaks. And now, in my own home, I was being demoted to a guest. That evening, the humiliation deepened. I overheard him telling the staff, men and women who had known me for years, not to take instructions from me anymore. If she asks for anything, he ordered, you clear it with me first. Understood. I wanted to melt into the ground. The butler, the cook, the housekeeper, they all avoided my eyes afterward. I could see their pity, but also their fear. His money was their paycheck now, not my voice. 2 days later, my credit cards stopped working. I thought it was a mistake at first. I called the bank, only to hear that all accounts had been transferred under new management. My son's management. I confronted him, shaking, desperate to hold on to some shred of dignity. Why would you cut me off like this? I asked, my voice cracking. He looked up from his laptop, not even pausing. Because you don't need it. You have your stipend. That's more than enough for you. Stop living like you're still the lady of the house. That was Dad's time. This is mine. And then came the words that shattered me completely. He stood, slammed the laptop shut, and pointed toward the door. You're useless now. This house is mine. If you don't like it, you can get out. I froze. My body went numb, my ears ringing. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. My own flesh and blood. The boy I had nursed at my breast, the child whose nightmares I had soothed, the man I had defended to teachers, to neighbors, to anyone who ever doubted him, was screaming at me like I was some unwanted stranger. Tears welled in my eyes, but he only grew angrier. Don't stand there crying, he snapped. You think I owe you something. You had your life with Dad. You're just nothing now. Nothing. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, staring at the family portraits on the wall. Photos of his first birthday, his graduation, his proud smile when he got his first car. I touched the glass over his face, whispering to the boy I used to know, "How could you do this to me? I carried you in my womb, and now you call me worthless." But as my tears dried, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just cruelty. This was arrogance, greed, entitlement, born from the fortune handed to him. He thought he had won. He thought I was defeated. He had no idea what was coming. Because betrayal, like his, doesn't break a mother. It forges her into something far stronger. I left that house the way a thief leaves a home they never belonged to. Quietly. No goodbyes. Just one suitcase, my clothes folded neatly. And the photo frame of my husband I slipped into the side pocket. My son didn't even watch me go. He was too busy entertaining his friends in the living room, boasting about the cars he was going to buy, the empire he was going to build. I stood at the gate, looking back one last time at the mansion I had poured my life into. The curtains I'd chosen, the roses I'd planted, the walls that had heard every laugh, every fight, every secret of our family. And now, I was nothing more than an outsider. That night, I rented a small apartment on the edge of the city. It felt like a cage compared to the home I had left. I unpacked slowly, each dress and book a reminder of how far I had fallen. It was while I was emptying my suitcase that I found it. A sealed envelope tucked inside the photo frame I had grabbed in a rush. My hands shook as I recognized the handwriting on the front, my husband's. Bold, steady, unmistakable. The envelope was marked only with my name. For a long moment, I just stared at it. He had been gone only weeks, and here I was holding his words again. My chest tightened as I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. My love. It began. I felt the tears before I even finished the first line. He had written it months before his death, almost as if he knew the storm that was coming. He spoke of the estate, of our son, of the future he feared. I know his heart, he wrote, and I know his weaknesses. He has potential, but he also has pride. If he allows greed to guide him, he will destroy everything I built. That is why I left certain conditions in the will, clauses only the executor and you know of. If he mismanages the estate, if he squanders or abuses it, control will pass back to you. I gasped, reading the words again and again. Could it be true? My husband had seen what I had refused to admit, that our son was not ready for such power, and he had placed a safeguard in me. The letter continued, "You must not reveal this to him. Let his choices prove the man he is. If he becomes reckless, if he fails to uphold the responsibilities, then the estate reverts to you. This is my final trust in you. Protect our legacy." By the time I finished reading, my tears had dried into something else. A trembling, burning mix of sorrow and resolve. My son thought he had thrown me away like yesterday's trash. He thought I was powerless, stripped of money and home. But in reality, I held the key to everything, the heartbreak of being called useless. Still pierced me, but beneath it, a secret strength was growing. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my chest. "You knew him better than I did," I whispered to my husband's photograph. and you left me the weapon to bring him back to his knees. Little did my son know, his 5-day empire was already crumbling. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. In fact, I saw the first one just 2 days after he threw me out. My son, the boy I had raised on home, cooked meals and bedtime stories, was now parading around in brand new sports cars. Not one, not two, but 3 of them, each more expensive than the last. The driveway that once held our family sedan now looked like a showroom, and the house. The mansion I had scrubbed, decorated, and guarded for decades. It was no longer a home. It had turned into a circus. Music thumped until dawn. Strangers poured in and out with champagne glasses and glittering dresses. He was hosting parties as if the money would never run out. I watched from afar, in silence. Every photo splashed on social media, every headline in the local gossip column. It was like watching a slow motion train crash. But it wasn't just the cars and the parties. He started investing too. Or at least, that's what he called it. Reckless ventures with shady friends who promised quick returns. When his father's trusted financial advisor tried to intervene, he laughed in his face. "I don't need your old man advice," he sneered in an interview that later went viral. "This is my empire now. I'll make it bigger than my father ever dreamed." But the world wasn't laughing with him. They were laughing at him. Headlines shifted from "Young heir to 44 million fortune" to "The spoiled son burning through his inheritance." The media loved the story of his rise, and they loved his fall even more. Behind the scenes, the debts were piling up. His so-called friends, who had encouraged the wild spending, began disappearing, one by one. The luxury cars, bought on credit. The lavish parties, funded with borrowed money. The investments, nothing more than scams dressed in fine suits. Within weeks, the vultures began circling. Debt collectors started showing up at the mansion gates, shouting his name, demanding payments. Neighbors whispered. Former party guests refused to return his calls. Even the servants he once commanded with arrogance began looking at him with pity, or worse, disdain. And yet, he carried on with the same arrogance, refusing to admit he was drowning. But I knew. I knew because I had seen this exact storm in my husband's letter. He had predicted it. He had warned me. And as I sat in my small apartment, the sealed envelope tucked safely in my drawer, I couldn't help but whisper, "It's happening." Just like he said. My son had thrown me out of my own house. He had screamed that I was useless. He believed he had the world at his feet. But in truth, he was a fool dancing on a cliff's edge. And with every dollar he wasted, every debt he ignored, every headline that mocked him, he was stepping closer to his downfall. 5 days. That's all it took for the empire he stole to start rotting from the inside. 5 days before he came crawling back. 5 days. That's all it took for the son who had screamed at me to come undone. On the morning of the 5th day, while I was quietly sipping bitter motel coffee from a paper cup, the phone in my bag vibrated. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of instinct. "Mrs. Hale." A calm voice said, "This is Mr. Porter, your late husband's attorney. I thought you should know. Your son has been trying to access the estate's liquid assets." I didn't say anything. I already knew what was coming. As per your husband's instructions. The lawyer continued, no funds exceeding 100,000 can be moved without your co-signature. Your son appears unaware of this clause. I almost laughed. Unaware. He had probably skimmed the will, seen the 44 million figure, and assumed he'd inherited a blank check. Thank you for letting me know, I said, my voice as steady as stone. What did he say when you told him? Mr. Porter hesitated. Hey, didn't take it well. I pictured it the boy who had screamed at me in our marble foyer, who had called me useless, now red-faced and shouting at a lawyer. It was almost poetic. 2 hours later, the knock came at my motel door. Hard, frantic. For a second, I thought it was management. When I opened it, I froze. It was him, my son, but not the son who had thrown me out. This was a pale, hollow version. His designer shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes wild with panic. He actually looked smaller than I remembered. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. Please, I need your help. I didn't move. 5 days ago, I said slowly, you told me I was useless. You told me to go die somewhere else. I know, he whispered. His lower lip trembled. I was wrong. You screamed at me. I interrupted, my tone colder than the motel's peeling wallpaper. In my own house. The house I built with your father, and now you're here. He stepped closer, his hands shaking. Mom, please, I can't access the accounts without your signature. I've got obligations. Loans. His voice cracked. I messed up, okay? I messed up bad. And then, to my astonishment, he dropped to his knees. On the grimy motel carpet. My son. The boy I had carried in my womb. The boy whose nightmares I had soothed, kneeling in front of me like a penitent child. I'm begging you, he whispered. Please. Don't let them take everything. For a moment, I simply watched him. The rise and fall of his shoulders, the tremble in his voice, the way his hands clenched together like a child praying. Funny, I murmured. 5 days ago, you wanted me gone. Dead, even. Now you want me to save you. His head jerked up. Mom, I held up a hand, silencing him. Inside, my heart was steady. Not racing, not breaking. Steady. You threw me out like trash, I said softly. And now you want me to pick up the pieces you shattered. Tell me, son, why should I? He swallowed hard, his eyes glossy. For the first time in his life, he had no answer. And in that silence, I realized this was the moment my husband had prepared me for. The moment I would decide whether to save him or let him drown. I didn't answer my son right away that night in the motel. I let him kneel there, choking on his pride, until his voice cracked and he began to sob. And then, with the calmness of a woman who has nothing left to lose, I said, if you want my help, you'll come with me tomorrow. To Mr. Porter's office. And you'll say exactly what I tell you to say. He nodded eagerly, desperate. He thought he had won. But what he didn't realize was that this was no negotiation. It was the beginning of his reckoning. The next afternoon, the lawyer's conference room was filled. Not just Mr. Porter, but several of our extended family members. Cousins, uncles, aunts, who had been circling like vultures after my husband's death. My son had always carried himself like the golden hair, the untouchable one. Today, I would peel that illusion away piece by piece. When he walked in, trying to smooth his disheveled appearance, whispers ran through the room. Everyone had already heard the gossip, the wild parties, the bad deals, the loans. He still tried to smile, but his eyes darted toward me nervously. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Porter said, clearing his throat. He opened a thick folder, the sealed instructions my husband had left behind. As executor, I must disclose certain conditions that were not immediately revealed at the initial reading of the will. Mrs. Hale has requested the presence of witnesses for this clarification. My son shifted in his chair. "What do you mean, conditions?" Mr. Porter adjusted his glasses. "Your father loved you deeply, but he was not blind to your tendencies. He structured the estate with protective clauses. While the $44 million and the mansion were left in your name, you do not have independent access to the funds or property. All major expenditures, investments, and asset transfers require signature and final approval from." He paused, turning to me. "Your mother." The room went silent. My son's mouth fell open. "What? No, that's not," he told me. "He told you what you wanted to hear." I cut in, my voice sharp but steady. "But he told me the truth. He knew you weren't ready. And deep down, you knew it too." The color drained from his face as laughter and murmurs rippled through the relatives. His carefully constructed mask was cracking. Mr. Porter continued, reading from the letter. "If the son is found to be mishandling funds, engaging in reckless behavior, or compromising the family's reputation, control of the estate reverts permanently to the surviving spouse." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. This was why my husband had written those sealed instructions. He had trusted me to decide when the boy became a man, or when he proved himself unworthy. And given the last 5 days, Mr. Porter added dryly, "it appears we have more than enough evidence." My son shot up from his chair, face burning. "This is insane. She's lying. You can't do this to me. I'm the heir." I rose slowly, my eyes locking onto his. "No, you're not. You're a spoiled child who thought money made you powerful. But power belongs to those who know how to protect it." Gasps filled the room. My son's fists clenched, his chest heaving. For the first time, he wasn't feared, respected, or admired. He was pitied. Defective immediately, Mr. Porter announced, control of the estate passes to Mrs. Hale. Any outstanding debts or personal liabilities incurred by the son will not be covered by estate funds. He will be personally responsible. The words hit like a hammer. My son collapsed back into his chair, pale and trembling. From golden hair to bankrupt fool in less than a week. I gathered my things and stood. "This fortune isn't yours to waste. It's your father's legacy. And I won't let you destroy it. Consider this your final lesson as my son." He didn't look at me. He couldn't. His head was bowed, his reputation shattered, his future uncertain. I walked out of that office with my dignity, my fortune, and something far more valuable, justice. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come with screams or chaos. Sometimes it comes with silence, signatures, and the humiliation of watching the arrogant fall on their knees. And as the door shut behind me, I thought, my husband trusted me. My son betrayed me. And now, I hold everything. Life after reclaiming the estate wasn't simple, but it was liberating. For the first time in years, I wasn't just the wife or the mother. I was me. I set up a foundation in my husband's name, one that gave scholarships to underprivileged kids and funded shelters for women who had nowhere else to go. Real people. People who knew the value of a meal, a safe bed, and a helping hand. Not entitled brats who thought the world owed them everything. I poured my energy into building something that mattered, something that would outlive me. Every donation, every grateful smile reminded me of why my husband had trusted me with this power in the first place. And yet, in the quiet of night, the wound was still there. Betrayal from strangers stings, but betrayal from your own blood. It's like someone carves out a piece of your heart and leaves it hollow forever. I didn't just lose a son that week. I lost the boy I raised, the boy I once believed in, but I refused to let his greed define me. Because here's the truth my son thought: to 44 million made him powerful. He thought money gave him control, respect, dominance. But power doesn't come from numbers in a bank account. Power is in restraint, in wisdom, in knowing when to open your hand and when to close it forever. And in the end, I closed mine. So now I have to ask you, what would you have done if your own child betrayed you like this? Would you have forgiven him? Given him a second chance because blood is thicker than water? Or do you believe what I believe, that betrayal cancels even the deepest ties, and respect has to be earned, even from your own flesh and blood? It's easy to say we'd forgive. It's harder when the knife comes from the very hand you once held while teaching them to walk. I know some of you will say I was too harsh. Others will say I should have gone further. That's why I tell these stories, because I want to hear what you think. So tell me in the comments, was I wrong to shut the door on him? Or was it the only way he'd ever learn the weight of his actions? I read every single one of your comments, and your perspectives always stay with me. And if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, because I share stories of betrayal, justice, and the kind of revenge life sometimes writes better than fiction. And before you go, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Until next time, remember, family is not defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty.